What's up, YouTube? So what you are looking at here is the reduction from my nearly 12 gallons of sap that I boiled the other day. I got it here on the stove for the finish boil. So today I am going to show you how I reduce sap down to the proper sugar content, to the content that it takes to be considered syrup, and how I jar it and store it. So let's get the burner fired up and get this sap boiling. We have a good boil going now. So all we have to do is wait a couple hours until enough of the steam has evaporated off so that the syrup is starting to get thicker in consistency, and at that point we'll start to use some of the tools over here to check the sugar content. I'm going to move the camera over and show you some of the stuff that I have assembled that we'll be getting to when we get to that point where we need to start checking the sugar content. So the first thing here is called a hydrometer, and it is for measuring the density of the syrup. That's basically the primary tool that we'll be using to check the sugar content. There's some instructions here that came with the hydrometer. We'll be using this little conversion scale for temperature variation here in the corner of that later on. Temperature plays a big role in the density of the syrup, which is why I have this next tool here, which is just a standard probe thermometer. Not as nice as maybe a digital one, but it will do the trick for sure. That's what I had on hand. So we'll use this to check the temperature, we'll use the hydrometer to check the density, and then we'll use the conversion chart to tell if we are at the optimal sugar content for syrup. This stainless steel tube here is called a hydrometer test cup, and what we'll do when we get to that point is we'll take that over top of the pot. We will ladle in enough syrup to where it's about 2 inches from the top, and then we will set it back onto a level surface, and we will gently drop the hydrometer down into it. Careful not to just let it go, because this is glass and it could potentially shatter. So once you've lowered it all the way to the bottom, then you'll release it and it'll become buoyant in the syrup, and you'll use the scale that's on it to basically tell what the content is. And that's when we'll check the temperature and use the chart and all that. Also, I have here, this is just for looks. I don't know that I'll actually use this. I do have one maple leaf jar. Maybe I'll use this for my own personal syrup that I'm going to use in the fridge. But for everybody that I'm giving syrup away to, because that's mostly what I do with all this, I'll just put them into standard ball mason jars. And the cool thing about the ball mason jar is that you put the syrup into it boiling hot, and then you tighten the lid down, you flip it upside down, and it seals itself. So that makes that really nice. You've got a nice sealed jar of syrup that can sit on the shelf for as long as you want it to, till you're ready to use it. The last thing here that I have that we'll be using is once we get the optimal sugar content, we will do one last filtering as we're putting it into the jars. So here in a couple hours, we'll check back in on the pot and we'll get to checking the sugar content. Alright, we're getting kind of down there in the pot, so at this point I am going to do my first check of the sugar content. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I am going to ladle some of this extremely hot sap into this test cup here. You don't want to overfill it. You want it at least 2 inches from the top, which I think I just put a little bit too much in there. So I'll pour some of that out. And then I will put the hydrometer in there very slowly till it bottoms out. Then I will let go of it. And it is not to the point of floating yet, so we got a little while yet to go. I'm not even going to bother checking the temperature. We'll give it maybe another 15-20 minutes, and then we'll check the sugar content again. It's been a little bit. We're going to check the sugar content again and see where we're at. So everything starts to get really sticky after checking the sugar content a couple times. Keeping your utensils pretty clean is key. So after I'm done with them, I try to rinse them off with hot water. Do not use soap, just rinse them off. All right. So on a level surface, I'll put the hydrometer in. I'm actually going to have a little bit of overflow, so I'm going to do it over the pot really quick and let the excess drain out. Okay, now let me set this back on a level surface and I'll show you what I'm looking at here. So this hydrometer, as you can see, I can push it down to the bottom of the cup. It is starting to float, so that means that we're getting close. Where we're going to look for, and we'll use the conversion chart to tell us for sure depending on the temperature, but somewhere just past that first line is probably that first red line on there that says hot test, 211 degrees. Somewhere right around that line is probably where we're going to end up depending on what the exact temperature is at the time that we do the test. So we're going to give it another couple of minutes and then we're going to try it again. So I got the temperature on the burner turned down so that it's not evaporating as quickly. Now that we're close to the point of having the correct sugar content. So let me do one more check. We should be really close now. Once you get down to this point, it goes pretty quick, it feels like. Once the hydrometer starts to float, you're not far from having syrup. Okay, that looks about 2 inches from the top. Let's put that on a level surface. We'll go ahead and float it. And we are just a couple more minutes away from having ourselves some syrup. So at this time, I think I'll mention that I did get some jars in the oven earlier off camera. I got them in the oven at 225 degrees. They've been in there for about a half hour, so those should be sterilized. So as soon as I achieve the proper sugar content, I'll take the jars out. I'll get a glass funnel that I got in there with the jars. I'll put a filter kind of down through the glass funnel, and then I will use the filter and glass funnel over top of a jar and a ladle in order to start filling jars full of maple syrup. So we'll see that here in just a couple minutes. All right, hopefully this should be the last sugar content check that we do. We got to be pretty darn close at this point. We'll put the hydrometer in above the pot so any excess can drain out. Alright, we're to the bottom or the top of that red line, I guess, whichever way you want to look at it. So let me put my temperature gauge in here. We'll see what this is. We're reading right about 200 degrees. 200 degrees. We need to be at about 32.25 on the float. Which would be, that's 32 exactly. So we need to be just on the underside of that line. We are real close. I would say that just a couple more seconds on that and we will be just about perfect. I don't even think we really need to recheck, to be honest, since it was right on the bottom side of that line anyhow. So I'll just turn this burner back up for a couple of seconds, and that'll allow me to clear some space out of the way, and we'll get some jars out of the oven, and we'll get some syrup. It's now syrup. We'll get syrup filtered into it. All right, here's our jar. There's our funnel. Here's the filter. We're gonna put filter in the funnel about like so. We're gonna get this jar as close over to the pot as we can so we have minimal spillage. And I leave the burner on at low so it's not continuing to boil, but so that the syrup remains hot. Helps keep it filtering easy. And this is going to be the first jar of maple syrup for me for this season. So this is exciting. This is a nice amber colored syrup here. Very delicious, I'm sure. I do have some extra filters. You can clean these filters and reuse them. They do tend to clog up rather quickly on this finished stage here. The more water that you evaporate out and the higher the sugar content gets, it definitely takes longer and longer to filter the product. Okay. There we go. Let me grab another jar out of the oven. Transfer that over to there. I'll take a wet paper towel and wipe along the rim of the jar just to make sure that I don't have any contaminants. Very good. Then my lid and my ring. And that jar is very hot, so I will tighten it down. Use this paper towel to turn it upside down. And there we have it, the first jar of the season. That will seal itself. I usually leave them overturned overnight and then flip them back up in the morning, and you can test the top of the lid and you can tell that they're sealed. Any that aren't sealed, I would just use those ones up first. So off camera now, I'm going to fill the other 2 jars and then we'll do a wrap up. So there is our finished product. That is 3 pint jars of finished maple syrup. They do look a little bit on the lighter side. I had some batches last year that turned out a little bit on the lighter side too, but they were just as good as the darker ones, and the consistency of them was almost indistinguishable. So I'm very well pleased with this. This season is well underway. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you found this content interesting or helpful in any way, please don't be afraid to hit the like button or subscribe to my channel. Thanks.